Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
Welcome on into the GSMC College Football Podcast, the inaugural GSMC College Football Podcast. This is episode 1, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome in. I am your host, Tom Dougherty. I'll be here on Mondays and Fridays to be bringing you your college football news and my thoughts on whatever's going on in the college football world. Right now, it is the countdown to the draft. We are now officially under a month away from the NFL draft. And yes, that counts as college talk because we have a bunch of college players going to be picked by NFL teams, and they are looking to get up in that draft stock. I mean, they had their pro days already. Most everybody had their pro day last week. I know Lamar Jackson had his pro day. We saw Baker Mayfield have his pro day with his nice headband on. We saw Sam Darnold throw in the rain at USC. The one time it actually rains in Los Angeles is when Sam Darnold has his pro day. But no, there's lots of stuff to talk about when it comes to what we're going to see later this month when I believe it's in Dallas. It's the first time we're having the draft at an actual stadium. It's in Jerry World. It's at the Cowboys Stadium in Arlington. So we'll see what happens when it comes to what these NFL teams are going to decide to do on draft day. And we got a lot of talent out there, lots of talent. I mean, the big name obviously we saw coming out of the NFL Combine, if I can get my words out. The NFL Combine, that was Saquon Barkley, the talented running back from Penn State. Saquon Barkley ran that nice and speedy 40-yard dash time, which kind of blew everybody out of the water. Also did a bunch of reps on the bench press at 225. Made everybody look kind of weak from that. He's a strong-armed running back. But I think there's a lot of talent when it comes to the running back field. We're going to get to that in our second segment. In this first segment, I wanted to bring up our quarterbacks. That's the number one position in the draft. Obviously, usually we see a quarterback or 3 or 4 go in the first round. We're probably going to see at least 4 in the first round. We got, obviously, like I mentioned, Sam Darnold had his pro day coming out of USC, had his pro day a couple weeks ago in the rain. Obviously, he looked really good. Coming out of with that, even throwing that wet ball in the rain, was zipping the ball through the raindrops. The only kind of hiccups were if a receiver was slipping, his hands were slippery and just couldn't catch the ball. He was leading the receivers well. He lofted that deep ball pass thrown at the boundary. He's that stocky QB model look that you want, and he's coming out of a program that is storied. And I mean, they haven't had quite the QB pass they want when it comes to USC QBs. The last really talented NFL success we've seen out of the USC was probably Carson Palmer. Obviously, you had Mark Sanchez was on a good Jets team that had a good defense, and they beat the Patriots and they go to the AFC Championship game. But since then, you got Matt Leinart and Barkley, who have not done that well either. So, I mean, Matt Barkley, I think he was over on the Browns. I mean, he's bounced around the league for a while, and then Leinart was on the Cardinals, and now he's busy doing the ESPN college football shows, so he's not in the league anymore. But, yeah, that's just as far as it goes for USC quarterbacks. But, no, Sam Darnold's definitely trying to change that tune when it comes to his NFL career coming out of that school down south. He's got another guy down from another school down south across a little jaunt over the freeway to UCLA. You have Josh Rosen, who we've heard reports saying he is probably the most prototypical NFL quarterback talent. Looking at like a Matt Ryan or even a Jared Goff. He's got that tall demeanor, slender, a little too slender for my liking. I think he can't take the hits that he's going to be facing when it comes to the big linemen coming around to whack him in the pocket. I mean, as good as a offensive line as you can get him, you will get hit as a quarterback. I mean, that's just how good defensive lines have gotten this year in the way that these defensive coordinators mix up their blitz packages and bring different guys from different areas, and you have a slot guy coming around, you have a corner coming in your face all of a sudden here. So, you got to have Josh Rosen beef up maybe a little bit. But when it comes to actual quarterback skills, footwork, I mean, that arm talent, I mean, everything when it comes to, maybe we'll see, he's a little outspoken. He's gotten some flack for that. Nothing, I don't really have a problem with that personally. He can have his political, which means he's not afraid of the spotlight, not afraid of saying what he feels, which is just fine to me. But some people get turned off by it. But he's up there, probably, arguably the second quarterback behind Sam Darnold, who will likely or should likely go to the Cleveland Browns, number 1 overall. But then it's going to get interesting after that because you got Josh Rosen. We haven't gotten to Baker Mayfield yet, but he's a whole different story. Some people want to stay away. Some people love him. I mean, he's been compared to Johnny Manziel. I don't think quite fairly has been compared to Johnny Manziel. I feel like he's a little better than Johnny Manziel, has a little more upside than Johnny Manziel. But, I mean, did have a run-in with the police, but that was just on a video. It was one run-in. Not going to mean he's going to be a bad NFL player. But I think that he just doesn't have the size. I mean, you see the two shorter quarterbacks in the NFL that have had success, Drew Brees and Russell Wilson. Those two are model guys. Those are smart guys. They got it figured out between the ears. Not that I'm saying Baker does not have it figured out between the ears. For all I know, he could be a Nobel laureate, but I mean, he probably isn't. Money is he isn't. The guy wore a headband on his pro day. He looks pretty good. He zips the ball pretty well, but can he get it over those tall linemen and those guys who on the defensive line? Like I said, not only are they good at blitz packages, they're really good at timing those throws out to get the paw up there, that big hands up there to bat those passes down. I mean, I've been seeing it. Those guys have been getting better at it every year, and they're mighty talented in the NFL level. So we'll see if Baker and who takes a chance on Baker when it comes to the draft. My opinion, he needs to go somewhere that has a quarterback, like maybe Arizona, and sit behind Sam Bradford, who just got signed over there in Arizona. You play in an indoor stadium. You're going to play in California 4 times, or 2 times every year when you go to the Rams and go to the Niners stadiums up in Santa Clara and in LA. The one time you might play in bad weather every year is if it rains when you play in Seattle. But other than that, you're playing 8 games in a dome in the desert, and the Cardinals kind of need that quarterback it's gonna be a marketing tool for them. So I feel like Baker would be a good fit for Arizona if they're going to trade up and do that, or if he drops to them, if they can maybe get that like 6th or 7th pick, if they can trade up and do that. I know the Bills are looking to trade up, but I feel like the Bills, when it comes to the Bills, I mean, I know this is a college show, but we're talking about college quarterbacks. We're going to get to Josh Allen, and this is what I'm talking about right now. Josh Allen needs to go somewhere cold, and that's why I'm thinking of the Bills, because the Bills are trading up. They're going to get up in that top of that draft, and if quarterbacks are a premium and they think that maybe somebody like the Jets, if the Jets are deciding whether they want to do Baker or Josh Allen, whoever is left, because I feel like Sam Darnold's going to be gone, number 1. And then if the Giants are smart, honestly, if the Giants are smart, which we don't know if they are, they're either going to take Josh Rosen and put him behind Eli for a year or 2. Remember, Eli is 37 years old. Everybody, reminder, Eli is 37 years old. They even benched him last year for who? I think, was it Geno Smith or one of their other quarterbacks that was not as good as, and then they fired their coach and put Eli back in. So I don't really know what was going on there, but Eli's still 37 years old, and he could be a great mentor, great mentor for Josh Rosen, not Josh Allen, not Bradley Chubb, who plays defense. I mean, as much as, you traded Jason Pierre-Paul to the Buccaneers, Bradley Chubb's a great defensive end. That would not be a terrible pick either. But I think that the Giants, they need to take Josh Rosen. Take Josh Rosen and Put him behind Eli. He's a big, tall guy. He's an outspoken guy. He's not going to be afraid of the spotlight in New York. I know it's a big franchise, but he played at a decently big franchise when it comes to colleges at UCLA in Los Angeles, which is basically the same kind of city as New York is, just over in California, size-wise, not culture-wise, but size-wise. So he's not afraid of that big media market. Nothing wrong there. Josh Rosen, I just think, is such a good fit in New York. And if they don't want to take a quarterback because the new GM, Gettleman from Carolina, he took a quarterback in Cam Newton. Back when he was with the Panthers, he doesn't want to rock the boat when it comes to, the owners love Eli. I keep saying Peyton. Eli Manning, the one who's still playing. They love Eli, so Gettleman doesn't want to have to pick a quarterback and make Eli be all nervous. And if he screws up one game or has a game where he throws 4 picks, which will happen because that's just Eli, and this is the way it is with Eli. We'll see how Odell Beckham helps him out there. But Josh Rosen, go to the Giants, please. Please, 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 Giants. Don't. Bradley Chubb would be a nice pick, too. I like Bradley Chubb. He would help your defense. Obviously, you now don't have a defensive end, really. The JPP is gone. I guess if you're not going to pick Josh Rosen, pick Bradley Chubb. It's going to be either one of those. Don't take Barkley. Maybe if you really need that cowbell running back, but we all know that first round, for top 10 running backs are not that great. I mean, you have once in a while, you have one pop, like last year, you had Todd Gurley. I think he was picked 8th or 7th or 8th or something like that. Maybe earlier. But he was top 10 running back when he was drafted, Todd Gurley, and now he finally popped. But other than that, I mean, look at Alvin Kamara, perfect example. Great pass-catching running back out of Tennessee, college football, drafted in the 3rd round. Just wait. There's plenty of running backs coming, and that will be my next segment. So just wait around, everybody who wants to hear about those college football running backs coming out for the draft. There's plenty of them. I'll list them all off and talk about them in the next segment. So, Josh Rosen, Giants. Obviously, I already talked about Sam Darnold. He needs to go to the Browns. He's going to be a savior for them. Good, stocky quarterback and withhold in the cold weather. I mean, when you were a Browns quarterback, you play in the AFC North. And you will be going to Pittsburgh. We will be going to Baltimore. You're going to be playing 8 games in bitter, cold Cleveland. And you're going to be going to Cincinnati. So decide. Because those are all cold weather cities. All of them. And they all have their snow flurries and ice storms and sleet and hail. And you might get a nice cleared night or day once in a while. Because football is a winter-fall sport. And you have to remember, you got to be a big, strong guy to be able to play there. So I feel like if the Browns decide to take a quarterback, it needs to be a bigger guy, and that's Sam Darnold. He's the most polished. He's probably the only ones of these 4 guys that can start immediately. I feel like Josh Rosen could use a year, like I said, behind Eli. Josh Allen could definitely use a year. I think Josh Allen needs to go to probably Buffalo or the Jets, where he unfortunately won't get the time. Maybe if you start Josh McCown or the Tyrod's already been traded. The Jets, the Buffalo signed A.J. McCarron, so maybe you put him behind A.J. McCarron for a little bit, because Josh Allen definitely needs some time behind as a backup behind the starter, because he's not going to succeed coming right out of the gate if he's a starter, especially in that AFC East with you got Patriots, Dolphins, and the Jets. Remember, Jets, the one thing about the Jets is they are the little brothers of the Giants. However, they have had a history of good defenses. Todd Bowles is not – he's a good coach. Todd Bowles is not your offensive guru, because he's not. He's a defensive guy. And he knows how to get after the quarterback. They've always done that, even back to the Rex Ryan days. They can get after the quarterback. So if you're going to be the Bills draft pick, you might need to have some time to figure out what you're going to do. And obviously, he's the bigger, sturdier guy, Josh Allen is, to withstand the bitter cold. We talked about Cleveland already and how all those are cold cities. You play in the NFC or the AFC North. In the AFC East, you got obviously 8 games in Buffalo, which is almost up in Antarctic or Arctic Circle, basically up there. Sorry, Buffalo fans, but I mean that's just the way it is up there. You know how you guys love that cold weather up there. Got to eat your hearts out. Great fans up there up in Buffalo. I have to give you guys some credit because that's cold. But you also playing New England. Snow's there. You get a little break when you go to Miami, but then wait, you got to go back to MetLife Stadium. It's cold there too, and really windy in there. So you got to have an arm to be able to cut through that wind. And Josh Allen has that. He'll get the touch. I think he'll get there with the touch. Probably sitting at maybe, I don't know. Him and Baker are just such different quarterbacks. It's hard to rank them all. Obviously, I like Darnold number 1, Rosen 2. We'll put Josh Allen at 3A and Baker at 3B because I just don't want to differentiate them that much because they're really hard to compare, and they're kind of both sitting there in that second tier of quarterback. And then obviously haven't even gotten to Lamar Jackson. Jesse and I talked a lot about him last week on the GSMC football podcast and the sports podcast because he had his pro day over at Louisville. Decided not to run the 40, which I think is a good idea because he's not a receiver. He's a quarterback. So, that's my take on the quarterbacks and regarding where the draft positions are, whether teams are going to trade up and take them. But I like that Josh Rosen hot take of the day, college football show. UCLA's Josh Rosen goes to the Giants, second pick. Giants getting a quarterback. There's his 37 years old. Reminder of the day. We'll be back to the next segment. We're talking about the running backs, kind of hinted to it before. We got Barkley out there, but there's a lot of other guys. So on the other side of this break, we're going to talk about some running backs.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast. I'm saying College Football Playoff because that just makes it sound like it's just rolls right off the tongue. The new College Football Playoff. You got to watch out for that. But no, College Football Podcast. You're on the GSMC Podcast Network. Always, all of our podcasts are brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Didn't mention that in the beginning, but mentioned it now. I'm your host, Tom Dougherty. We talked about a lot of quarterbacks in the beginning, those top 4 quarterbacks. Even kind of mentioned Lamar Jackson. Wanted to note that maybe he can go somewhere like the Saints. I know Jesse talked about it last week, going to the Saints. I like the Steelers, maybe somewhere with obviously a quarterback that he can sit behind. Tate likes the Cardinals, even though I like Baker Mayfield going to the Cardinals. But Baker and Lamar Jackson are kind of similar. Quarterbacks are more mobile, but they both need to kind of learn how to sit in the pocket anyways, because that's how you can succeed in the NFL, and that's how you've seen guys like Russell Wilson, who are mobile quarterbacks, but they have to learn how to throw out of the pocket. And that's how Russell, he throws out of the pocket. And then when he absolutely has to, he'll move. And then he doesn't really, if you look at Russell Wilson, actually, he kind of scrambles, but he more moves the pocket. It's more designed plays where the linemen are actually kind of moving with him, kind of a zone blocking, but for the quarterback. And then he can find a new launch point to deliver a pass to an open receiver. However, this is the running back segment about the running backs. So Saquon Barkley, talked about it a little bit in the beginning. Big splash on the combine in Indianapolis. Off the charts when it comes to the bench press, jump, or a vertical leap, and the 40-yard dash looked really good. But you got to remind yourself, look at his stats at Penn State. He was a home run hitter. He was not your bell cow every down back. He actually, I think he only averaged like maybe 3-4 yards a carry at Penn State. He was the guy where, yeah, you saw him on ESPN highlights because he ran that 45-yard touchdown in or a 55-yard touchdown in. The guy's got wheels. It's not going to take those away from him. He's got wheels, and he can be a home run hitter, big breaker. But if you want a running back that is going to take 25, 30 carries a day, every Sunday, not get hurt, you got to look at somebody else, I think, in my own opinion. And I don't even think any running backs in this draft, they're so deep. It's a deep draft when it comes to running backs. You can get a Saquon Barkley, 80% of him, or even 85% of him in the second round probably, because there's just so many to pick from. And I wouldn't pick a running back in the first round anyways. I'm taking a defensive player, honestly, or a lineman if I don't need a quarterback. So, I mean, looking at this running back that came out, you got Sony Michel. You watched him in the national championship game for Georgia, and against in the semifinal, looked really good. He's a quick back. I mean, he's more similar to Saquon as that home run hitter versus the other back from Georgia, Nick Chubb, is more of your between the tackles, grinder, getting every yard as he can. I'm not going to say short yardage back because he can bust him too. He can bust him out and get some big runs. I mean, he's done it at Georgia, broke some records there. But you got those two Bulldogs from Georgia, Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. Not to mention another SEC running back, Darius Geis from LSU. I mean, he's not quite the flashiest guy. He's not like what you saw from Leonard Fournette, where he's racking up these big runs where he's running people over, but he's a solid back. I mean, I watched a lot of him at LSU. I would not mind my team, who will remain nameless, to draft him because he's a solid back. I mean, he's the guy who's going to, again, he can take that ball, take those carries 25, 28 times a game. I mean, I'm not worried about it. I have to see how he does out of the backfield when it comes to pass catching, because that's kind of what we're getting to this time at this kind of league. You watch the Super Bowl, it's not one back, it's three backs, 2 or 3 backs at least. You got Deion Lewis and James White for the Patriots. Well, Deion Lewis ain't there anymore; he's on the Titans, but they're catching balls out of the backfield. I don't know what Darius Geis can do when it comes to that, but he's definitely a guy from LSU. Was behind Fournette, probably knows all of his little tricks, probably learned his workouts, probably got his footwork down. I mean, he's going to be a good NFL running back. Then another SEC running back. Oh, there's just another one. We forgot about it. And his name is Kerryon Johnson. He went to Auburn. And he is a great player because he was in that Auburn offense that is kind of interesting to watch. They're almost like a quasi-spread. They had another quarterback. Actually, their quarterback this year was more of a passer. Didn't run as much as they have had before, like a Cam Newton. But, I mean, he's that running back where he scared Alabama. I mean, he almost took that game over against Alabama, where he is going to just be a game-breaker kind of thing. But he also is that combo back where he can take the hits, he can get between the tackles and do those small runs. He's a smaller guy, so he can kind of fit through those smaller blocks. But he's also, I mean, he's 6 feet, 212 pounds, not that small of a guy, dang. So, I mean, he's still there. SEC Player of the Year in 2017. I mean, I just listed those other running backs. I mean, what does that mean? SEC Player of the Year in 2017 as a junior, and he's coming out. I like him. I think he's going to go probably early second round, mid-second round, could maybe third round there. Kind of could be the next Alvin Kamara, because he's the guy who's going to catch the ball in the backfield. Did a lot of those nice little wheel routes at Auburn. They had that quarterback at Auburn who has some nice touch, and he came out of the backfield a lot on little screen passes, wheel routes, little angle routes over the middle. I mean, that's where you want. And now in these NFL, I mean, I would talk about the Patriots before the Super Bowl. The team that actually won the Super Bowl, the Eagles, they did it with Corey Clement. I mean, he was a quick little speed back who was coming out of the backfield and was going to burn your linebackers. And that's what Kerryon Johnson can do. And I think he's going to do that for a good team because that's who's going to pick him, a team that's going to draft later probably. like a Patriots and take a guy like Kerryon Johnson. All right, who else we got? We got from the USC Trojans, Ronald Jones. We got to him last, but he's another guy who's a big dude. I mean, I think he's probably like 6'2", 6'1", big dude, well over 200 pounds. And he was a guy who was kind of their every down back. He was their first down, second down back at USC. Definitely a draft prospect. I mean, Ronald Jones the second, NFL draft prospect. Where do they got him going here? They got the Lions. Well, that was the Lions guy was saying that they want him. Actually, that's a cool little fit going to Detroit, I think, for Ronald Jones coming out of USC. No, but he's definitely going to be a talent. So, I mean, Saquon has all the hubbub because ESPN likes to just pick one player and decide to make him their darling after he's running in his shorts and lifting some weights. I mean, yeah, he was great at Penn State too. He was in the running for the Heisman, but I think that you can get a guy like him. I just listed, 5 guys who I think are just as equally or could even have a better NFL career depending on which team they go to. I mean, look at the only time, I did mention Todd Gurley, but there's also Ezekiel Elliott because he went to imagine Ezekiel Elliott without the Cowboys running offensive line. He would not be very successful, I don't think. He's a great player. Obviously has that combo coming out of the backfield. Good running with the ball, but also can catch the ball, has good hands. But I mean, I think that you can get more value later in the draft for the same kind of talent as Saquon Barkley with those guys like Sonny Michel, Darius Geis, Ronald Jones, Nick Chubb, and Kerryon Johnson. There's probably even more I haven't even listed. Those are just the ones that came up on top of my head. Honestly, I thought of those. I did not look at any draft boards or anything like that. I just thought of those because most of them were on TV a lot last year because they were playing for good teams. 2 of them played for a team that went to the national championship game last year and lost on a walk-off touchdown. Probably should have won the game, honestly. But I digress. Continuing at the end of this, as we come to the end of this segment, this is going to finish up with a couple more thoughts about the upcoming draft. If you're the Browns, you can take a quarterback first pick, but you gotta remember you got the 4th pick as well. So if the Jets and the Jets, because the Jets are picking 3rd. The Giants and the Jets take quarterbacks like they should. Giants, Josh Rosen, don't let me down. Josh Rosen to the Giants. Hot take of the day. However, Bradley Chubb would not be a bad one either. Great defensive lineman from NC State. But if Bradley Chubb drops to 4, Browns take him. Take him at 4. Do not take Saquon at 4. Take Bradley Chubb at 4 if he drops. The Giants and the Jets both take quarterbacks. Jets are going to take quarterbacks. That's pretty much, you don't give them any draft picks to not take a quarterback. And if the Giants don't take a quarterback and the Jets pick Baker Mayfield with the 3rd pick, and he's the second quarterback off the board, we're going to have some issues, I think, because he's not the man for them. They play in that cold stadium, but we were talking about the quarterback. So Bradley Chubb, 4th pick, please, to the Browns, because that's what they need. They have, obviously, Myles Garrett, who came back last year and had 7 sacks coming off injury. And that's not terrible at all. I mean, we talked about it. Me and Jesse talked about it last week on the football podcast on Thursday. The fact that that's not a bad number at all. Imagine if you had 2 of those guys now. You got Bradley Chubb coming off that end. I mean, that defense is going to look mighty good. And then you obviously got Sam Darnold. They already have a running backs. They have Duke Johnson, and they just signed Carlos Hyde. So if the Giants don't take Bradley Chubb, which they could, wouldn't be a bad pick. However, I do think they need to take quarterback. We went over this. The Browns, Bradley Chubb, so Minkah Fitzpatrick can drop. I mean, he wouldn't be a bad pick either because Minkah Fitzpatrick's that guy from Alabama. You got to be worried about those guys from Alabama, though. They can have a little wear and tear because Nick Saben does work those guys hard. They play a lot of games every year. They're always in the championship, always in the playoff, playing an extra two games at least going into that playoff. But no, Minkah Fitzpatrick's that good hybrid where he can either play in that safety position, maybe even on the slot corner, nickel corner, but he's probably a good safety. He hits hard. He's got great ball skills, good ball awareness. I mean, I kind of want him on my undisclosed team. But I don't think he's going to fall that far in the draft. But I feel like if you're the Browns, you have 2 picks in the first round, Bradley Chubb or Minkah for your 4th pick after you take Sam Darnold to the first pick. So that was my little mock draft thing. Moore was telling the Browns and the Giants who to pick, and the Jets kind of too. And then we'll see if Buffalo trades up. We'll see what the Broncos do at 5. Broncos at 5 is interesting because they did get Case Keenum. I do want to talk about this for a second. They did get Case Keenum. They're interesting at 5. Do you trade back and get some picks, or do you take Minkah? Hopefully, I mean, your defense is already pretty tight. Or you can take Quentin Nelson from Notre Dame at 5, or you can take a quarterback. This thing, there's still going to be a quarterback left on the board. Unless that'd be crazy. I mean, who's picking 4? No, I mean the Browns picking 4. So they're not gonna take a quarterback at 4. Obviously, they're taking one at 1. So we're gonna have 1, 2, 3. Is gonna hopefully be 3 quarterbacks if the Giants pick Josh Rosen, and then there'll be a quarterback like maybe even Josh Allen or Baker Mayfield, or even if they love Lamar Jackson. I mean, he probably is better in the second round. I would probably pick Quentin Nelson, but if the Broncos aren't just going to sit on Case Keenum, they want to have a quarterback to groom. I mean, you got John Elway as your GM. I mean, you got to have a quarterback to groom. You whiffed on your last one with Paxton Lynch. You got to try again. John Lynch has come out and said that he's willing to try again. So you have that 5th pick. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with that one really quick. So, when it comes down to the draft, we'll probably talk about it some more on our show on Friday with the Broncos. Talk about it more because we're coming to the end of this segment. Next segment, we're going to talk about the new coaches in the college football world. We had a lot of coaching carousel action going on over the offseason, some firings, some hirings, and some buyouts. My favorite thing, those coaching buyouts, those schools paying coaches not to coach for them. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, the first episode of this College Football Podcast, the inaugural episode. We talked about a little bit of the 2018 NFL Draft coming up. That is college talk because we have some college players that are going to become NFL players here soon. It's that lovely mesh point between the college game and the NFL. Obviously, we had the Combine a few weeks ago, and then we've had most of our top players have had their pro day. I know that Lamar Jackson had his last week. We saw Baker Mayfield with the headband. We saw Josh Allen actually threw inside, and then Sam Darnold threw outside in the rain because it rained in California once, because that's all it happens. It happens once in Southern California, at least. So this is the third segment. This is an interesting segment I decided to do because it is the offseason in college football. We have some springtime games, but as our inaugural show of this podcast, the College Football Podcast, it's only right to talk about the coaches and the coaching carousel that happens every year. That's the one thing about college sports is they're coaching leagues. I mean, the Krzyzewski, I mean, this is basketball, but the Krzyzewskis, why am I drawing a blank? Oh, Calipari's, the Patinos. Well, he's not there anymore. But when it comes to college basketball, it's the same way in college football. You got Jimbo Fisher. Kevin Sumlin actually doesn't have a job yet, I don't think. You got Herm Edwards now, who is the new head coach at ASU. Remember, Herm Edwards was coach of he coached the Chiefs, he coached the Jets. You've probably seen him on the ESPN's NFL shows for being the advocate of the anti-Twitter advocate, the don't press send advocate, because he's always the guy who's like, don't press send. And he obviously has one of the better rants that's been on our recorded history, always on YouTube. One of my favorite YouTube watches when you play to win the game. And you'll see Herm Edwards now in Tempe coaching up those Sun Devils over in the Pac-12. One of the bigger moves and one of the more scandalous moves we saw was the Jimbo Fisher movement over from Florida State, a great football program where he won a national championship with Jameis Winston, and now went over to the vacant Texas A&M job. Where, like I said, Kevin Sumlin hasn't found a job yet. I think he's working for ESPN. But he was let go over there. They didn't want him anymore. We'll see how much I don't know how much they're still paying him to leave. Obviously, they paid him because that's usually how it works. When you fire a coach before his contract is up, you have to do a buyout. And there's always a buyout clause in a coach's contract. Usually it's around the sum of a few $1 million, maybe even more, sometimes 10 or 12. But yeah, no, so Jimbo jumped ship over to College Station to be the coach at Texas A&M. And he left a vacancy at Florida State, and that's going to be Willie Taggart's job. Willie Taggart was at Oregon last year, and Mario Cristobal is going to grab his job over at Oregon. So they all kind of just shifted around there. But the big thing about it is, I don't know what it was. I think it was an interesting scenario with Jimbo at Florida State was the fact that maybe he just wasn't getting along with the old management. I mean, you got a lot of stuff when it comes to college athletics. These players aren't being paid anything. However, the coaches are being paid a lot. And I've already mentioned how much they get paid not to coach. You have to deal with a lot of people. I mean, when you're a professional coach, you got a GM and an owner. And if you're Bill Belichick, you have the owner, basically, because you're the GM too. But when you're a college coach, you have an athletic director, you have the boosters, you have parents, you have the president of the university, sometimes a chancellor of the university, and more boosters. Because, I mean, you look at Texas, you got Red McCombs. They have Texas guys who are just like, oh, no, we don't want that coach. Vote him out. Like Charlie Strong, sorry, buddy. I don't even think he's there anymore. Yeah, no, he's not there anymore. It's the guy from they got the young coach. They got the young coach who screams a lot. That offensive coordinator from where the young coach. I'll think of his name in a minute. But more about Jimbo Fisher. Yeah, no, he's over now in College Station. He's going to be recruiting the Texas area. I mean, that could be why. Florida is one of the best states ever to recruit. Got lots and lots of talent there, but you got a lot of competition. You got Florida. Florida State has competition with University of Florida, and then also Miami. Now you got UCF is coming up. Obviously, I'll get to that in a minute. The fact that Scott Frost got his pay raise and his in coaching, that's basically a promotion when you're Scott Frost and you have a team like UCF and you coach them to an undefeated season. And then they claim the national championship because that's how it works. All of a sudden, you could just claim it. But no, when you're undefeated and you're in a lesser conference, schedule some people. Let's schedule some teams. But, Scott Frost leaves UCF for Nebraska, which is an interesting choice. I mean, Nebraska is definitely your classic college football school powerhouse. Definitely in the past, kind of had a down few years. Play over in that Big Ten. I love the Big Ten, honestly. Actually, I'm more of we're out here, so a Pac-12 guy, kind of. But I mean, I like to pay attention to everything. I'm kind of upset that Jim Harbaugh left the Bay Area. However, he's having some fun over there at in Ann Arbor with the Big Blue, Michigan. But now he's got a little competition when it comes to the most popular coach in the conference. Nebraska's got Scott Frost now, so we'll see how he does in his first season with the Cornhuskers. We'll see how. I mean, this Herm Edwards thing, going back over to the Pac-12 with the Sun Devils at Arizona State. It's gonna be interesting. Let's see what they have to say about what they say about Mr. Edwards, Coach Edwards going to. Here's your winner for strangest hire of the offseason. This is from CBS Sports. Strangest hire of the offseason. This analyst does not get it. They gave him an F. They're grading all the different coaching hires. An F. CBS Sports gives them an F on for the hiring Herm Edwards. I mean, he is definitely what you'd call a retread. I mean, I don't think he's never coached in college. A coach hasn't been at the college levels yet. 1989. I mean, you never know. He definitely is going to be a rebel rouser. He'll rouble those fans. But the thing about it, at Arizona State, the number one sport at Arizona State is arguably partying or beer pong. I mean, you could say that too, but partying probably. But those two good things go hand in hand. Football has never really been the thing. They had a good little basketball squad this season, before they got bounced in the first round. But then, football, they're trying to maybe get the high profile coach, the guy who was on ESPN, the guy who has all the cool little sound clips, and maybe he's going to be a good mentor for those players, not tell them not to use Twitter. I can't tell you because I didn't hire him. I mean, it's just interesting to see how well they're going to do over there in a tough conference, honestly, now. I mean, the Pac-12 football was down. We'll see how Stanford does. I love David Shaw. Gotta love what they're doing over there, because every year, even with a limited recruiting class, you still have a high octane football team, high talent football team with a high academic rigorous requirement and rigorous demanding schedules for those guys. David Shaw's been doing a great job over there. So I mean, Herm Edwards got his work cut out for him. Obviously, USC is going to be good for another year or so. They got some good quarterbacks. Always a good recruiting school, because it's just that name, obviously. And then the same thing with UCLA, Oregon. I mean, Cal, we'll see what Cal does. They're usually pretty up and down. But, I mean, Arizona State, never really the sexiest name in college football. We'll see what Herm Edwards does for that school come the fall. The next one up. We talked about Scott Frost. Obviously, I think that's probably going to get an A. We'll just look at this really quick. Willie Taggart got an A. They're talking about an A. He's going to be interesting. He had a little down year. I mean, coming in coaching Mark Helfrich's team, basically did not get to do. He's only at Oregon, I think, for a year or two. And Willie Taggart, I like Willie Taggart, good coach. And he didn't really get a recruiting class through at Oregon because he was there for such a short period of time, basically coaching, like I said, coaching Mark Helfrich's team. Mark Helfrich now the offensive coordinator of your Chicago Bears, by the way. But no, Willie Taggart back down in Florida. I think that's where he was before. Wasn't he at UCF, or he was at USF? I think USF. So now he's back in Florida, but not down as south. He's up in Tallahassee at Florida State. And then what other name did I see on here? It's an interesting name. Sonny Dykes. Sonny Dykes used to coach at Cal. Now he's the air raid guy. He was the big air raid offense. He loves throwing the ball. He was Jared Goff's coach. So now he's in SMU, Southern Methodist Mustangs now. So he's gone over there down in Texas. It's gonna be interesting. He was I think also he started at like Louisiana State or Louisiana Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns. I think it's where he started. Then went over to Cal because of his big offensive prowess. Just throw the ball more, throw. So, long way off. We got some time. It's obviously spring football right now. That'll do it for this segment. Oh, let's see. Scott Frost got an A. Okay, yeah. Mike Riley was fired. They got Scott Frost. It's going to be, he was the hottest coach on the market. He was the hottest coach on the market. We'll see. It's interesting that you don't see Kevin Sumlin has a new job. Dan Mullen, it's true. Dan Mullen went over to Florida from Mississippi State. That was a good little hire after they got Jim McElwain and got fired midway through the season last year. So we'll see how Florida fares in the tough SEC, as it always is. And then obviously, we didn't even get there. yeah, we got a little more time to talk about this. Chip Kelly is making his way back to college football where he belongs. I mean, he did fine for the Eagles. He did not do fine for the 49ers. He made his name with that speed offense. It was bred in college football. It belongs in college football. And now he's back in the Pac-12 with the Bruins at UCLA. And that was the A-plus rating there by our CBSSports.com grade book here. And it says, not the most desirable job on the market, but definitely landed the biggest name in Chip Kelly coming back to the college rankings. Going to be very, very, very interesting to see what he does this season. Obviously, they're going to be losing their quarterback, but UCLA down there in LA has a lot of recruiting area to pick from. They got to obviously battle with USC, but Chip Kelly definitely is going to carry that name a little more heavier than Clay Helton can over at USC. I mean, if you have a recruit who's got to pick between two, I mean, especially if you're an offensive player, you can decide to play for Chip Kelly, who probably will make you great, or for Clay Helton, who, I mean, he's been said to be pretty average of a coach. I mean, that's why they think that Sam Darnold is such a high ceiling, because he's been able to do what he's done with pretty average coaching. And imagine what he could do with, I mean, Hugh Jackson honestly is a good offensive coach, so I think he can make Sam Darnold do something, but you never know with Cleveland. I digress on the whole Cleveland thing, but nope, Chip Kelly is at UCLA. He's a Bruins head coach now after Jim Mora was fired. I think he was there for 4 or 5 years, I believe. Jim Mora was there for a while. But yeah, no, Chip Kelly's there. Big win for the Bruins down there, battling it out in that market with USC. Probably they're like number 2 when it comes to football, at least. Probably number 1 when it comes to basketball down there in LA. When it comes to, like, popularity market, all kind of thing. But no, Chip Kelly definitely upgrades that profile for them. So that'll wrap it up for this segment. We talked about the some head coaching changes in the college football world. Some of the big names: Jimbo going over to Texas A&M, Chip Kelly at UCLA. You got Jim McElwain out at Florida, Dan Mullins in, and then obviously Willie Taggart jumps cross country. That's a far jump right there for Willie Taggart, going from Oregon to Florida State. But I'll be right back. Kind of the last segment, we're going to talk about kind of whatever I'm thinking about, maybe more coaches, maybe a little more of some spring football talk of what to look for coming this fall. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the final segment of the inaugural episode here of the College Football Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. It is I'm glad you'll all be along here with you. It is Tom Dougherty talking to you over these podcast waves, whatever you want to call it, however you may be listening on your podcast device, whether it be on YouTube or over your iPhone or your Android or however you may be listening. Like I say, Colin Cowherd, wherever you are, however you may be listening. This is Tom Dougherty for the final time on this show. It's the first episode. We are going to complete this show up with some talk from spring football. I know that we have always football to talk about. This is a college football show, so we're going to go spring football. That's the real football right there. Those scrimmages, those red versus white, scarlet versus silver. I mean, you know, we're a big school when you get the scrimmages on ESPN. So kudos to Ohio State and Alabama. I said crimson and red. We could also even do the blue versus yellow game for Michigan. So, I mean, those are happening all over the country. I mean, a lot of them happened last week. They have them, I think, every week. They have scrimmages because it is spring football right now. There's a lot of players. I mean, you got these schools bringing in, 40 guys every year to compete for walk-ons, and then you got, obviously, I think 20 or 30 scholarships every year you can have when it comes to college football. I mean, these teams are huge sometimes, getting up to like 70 guys on the roster. Not all of them play, obviously. But I do want to talk about, to complete this show up, the defending national champion, Alabama Crimson Tide. Or Crimson Tide. Yeah, that's right. Crimson Tide. What was I thinking? I was wrong. Because it's an elephant is the mascot. This kind of threw me off. No, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Roll Tide. So you have a quarterback in Jalen Hurts who, personally, I think is a running back and just has a good arm. I mean, you can throw him out there, maybe a couple reverses, but you have that kid from Hawaii that won you that national championship. Let me see. I don't know. I need to look up a phonetic spelling of that gentleman's last name. I mean, he's a supreme talent. I mean, you just watch that last highlight. I mean, talk about pressure. You're in overtime against a good Georgia defense. You came in at halftime, and you all of a sudden you just took a bad sack on the previous play. I mean, I think they lost 15, 20 yards on the play before that. You give him the ball back, or the game is pretty much over. Nope. You just pull out your best play of the game and throw a dime to the corner of the end zone, front corner of the end zone, over the defender's head. I mean, the receiver did a good job running off the defender. The defender had no chance. This corner thought he had some safety help over the top, but he obviously didn't, or the safety got there very, very late because the ball was fit right in over the shoulder of the receiver just perfectly, and he got it to win the game on it was a walk-off touchdown. You don't really see walk-offs in football too much now. I mean, you have sudden death overtime, but that was a walk-off touchdown to win the national championship again for Alabama. And Nick Saben, obviously, you gotta love Nick Saben. I mean, he's the guy. Oh yeah, Tua Tagovailoa. Tua. Well, it's gonna call him Tua. I mean, I don't want to butcher his last name. It's a cool last name. Jalen Hurts, that's pretty easy to pronounce, but Tua, good kid from Hawaii, comes all the way across the country. I mean, what's that got to be? 5,000 miles, 6,000 miles. They go to Tuscaloosa. You're far away from home. Now you're playing as a freshman in the national championship game for Nick Saben. If you don't make this play, he's going to chew your booty out. And it's not gonna be very good, or I don't know. Maybe he's really supportive. I don't know. Nick Saban just is he's a really good coach, and he obviously knows how to get his players to do what they need to do because he obviously has the track record that gets people to get going and gets his team into the positions to win. So he goes on ESPN a lot, and he gets because he has to do these. When you're in the South, football is pretty much the lifeblood, and when you have people waiting months. I mean, I was waiting months for baseball to start. People are waiting months for spring football to start. Now that it started, you already have a quarterback controversy because you got Jalen Hurts, the older statesman, who started all of last year until that championship game where he got pulled for Tua. And then you got Tua, who is a promising young, I think he's going to be, obviously going to be a sophomore coming up this season. And you're Nick Saban, you're already getting questions it was March when he was actually asked him originally, because I think Jalen got hurt during spring football. Yeah, and there's already reports out and articles out saying that Nick Saban faces his most interesting quarterback choice yet. And I mean, from watching that game, I've already said Jalen Hurts is he's very elusive. I mean, I love watching the guy run. He sets up blocks very well. He gets away from those. He's faster than those linebackers. He gets away, uses the boundary well. So I like him more of like a scat back. I mean, you can't really throw him back there. I mean, maybe just kind of you could run a read option. That's a little more retreaded. But Tua is definitely that more of a drop back, prototypical passer. And he's definitely probably what's going to put Alabama back in that playoff picture. Well, they're going to do that themselves just by being Alabama. But actually getting him there and playing against a tough, even tougher now SEC as it gets. You see because when coaches come to schools, like now you're going to get Willie. Well, that's not the SEC, but Florida. You got Dan Mullen going over to Florida. He did well at Mississippi State, and now you got Jimbo Fisher coming over to Texas A&M. That's in the SEC. So to win that SEC, I think Alabama was actually in the SEC East. They have two divisions. So if you win your division, you play in the SEC championship game. But they have a decision to make over in Tuscaloosa. And it's going to be interesting to see what Nicky does, because Nicky hasn't really had a decision like this to make in a long time. I mean, he's had players that just come and they were recruited to be the starting quarterback. And I bet you Tua was recruited to be the starting quarterback, but he probably had to wait his turn. But now he's kind of forcing his hand in the fact that Nick made the decision back in January to play Tua. And now he's going to make another decision if he's going to play Tua in the fall. So, and give him the keys to the car for the whole season versus one half. I mean, I understand it's the biggest game of the year, obviously, but when it comes to a full season, risk of injury, there's a lot of different variables you got to think about when you're a head coach. So, Nicky's got an interesting decision to make, and he's going to make it. He's got some time. I mean, it's spring ball, and it's beginning of April, so I mean, I'm more focused on the draft. Nick's probably more focused on getting players healthy and figuring out which walk-on is gonna make it, and who graduated high school early to come to spring practice and is gonna already be which freshman is gonna start. So I mean, he's probably got bigger things to worry about. I mean, you got a very highly anticipated quarterback competition to come, I guess. But I think Tua, if there really was a competition, Tua would win it handily because he's just a better, more prototypical quarterback than Jalen Hurts is. However, Jalen Hurts is the older guy. He knows the system better. He's been around longer, and usually that will speak to something. So it's going to be interesting to see. All right, we're coming to the end of this inaugural college football podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Tom Dougherty. We have a few more minutes here. I'm going to talk about some more draft stuff coming up here. It's going to be interesting to see how many players from Alabama. Speaking of Alabama, they got Minka Fitzpatrick, but then it's also, are we going to have an unprecedented quarterback draft here? We have 4, maybe even 5, if you want to think about Lamar Jackson in the late first round. I know Tate does. 4, maybe 5 quarterbacks going before maybe even the 17th pick. I mean, there's some teams out there who are going to be drafting late, like Pittsburgh, like even the Patriots. I mean, there's been reports saying Tom Brady's probably got maybe 1 or 2 years left, likely even 1. I think 1, honestly, 1 year left. So, I mean, they traded Jimmy Garoppolo. You got to draft a quarterback sometime. If you're not going to set up your buddy Josh McDaniels up, Billy Belichick there. So if you're not going to set up Josh McDaniels up correctly, you got to draft a quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see come draft day. I mean, this is the countdown to the draft episode, the first episode, and there's probably going to be maybe one of these a week where I'm just going to talk about the draft a lot and then do other stuff regarding the actual play on the field, college football, because we are getting close. I mean, we are, I think, at 24 days until the draft. Draft is April 26th in Dallas at Cowboy Stadium. The first time is going to be at a NFL stadium. So I'll catch you next time on Friday. This has been Tom Dougherty at the College Football Podcast at the GMC Podcast Network. Have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network, from football to basketball, baseball to MMA, and even soccer. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast.